Welcome to another episode of the Guns and Yoga podcast. Today's guest is Patrick Benson. Patrick is the co-founder and director of War Horses for Veterans, a Kansas City-based nonprofit that brings combat veterans and first responders from across the country together in a safe and peaceful environment. The program is designed to teach the basics of horsemanship and provides opportunities for networking and personal growth. Patrick is a United States Army veteran who served in the infantry from 1998 to 2004. He knows firsthand the emotional and physical strain on our combat veterans. He is a professional horseman and manages a training and breeding program for performance horses. Patrick, thank you for your service and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, you guys are doing some great work in Stillwell, Kansas, and I'd love for you to share that with our listeners. I usually start out by asking, and particularly when I have people like you who have served, whether it be military, first responders, what led you to your path of service? Did you always know that you wanted to be in the Army?
Actually, it's kind of a funny story. My father served, he was in the medical side of things. He was a doctor in the late 60s, early 70s. And then my brother went in, and we've had other family members and stuff like that served in combat in different branches of Army and Marines. Mine was really, I didn't want to waste my time and resources in college, because at that time in my life, I was probably not going to be the most conducive use of my time. And productivity, but I've always appreciated the military. I studied it, we played Army, did a lot of that stuff. Always, watched all the cool movies, and but made the decision in 1998, and was going to go do something, challenge myself. Everyone asked why I'm going infantry. I'm like, well, it looks cool. But at the end of the day, I had an idea what the infantry did, but it was challenging. It was going down that road, and that was really the stepping stone for that. But, I guess hidden back deep inside, there was always a tradition and support. Probably one of us would eventually go through the United States military. And then my brother, like I said, he did it. He was MI. And so I was the smartest one, and I went infantry.
That's funny. So you were in for about 6 years, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I was in for 6 years. Got in 1998. Fort Benning, Georgia, and then my first duty station was Baumholder, Germany. And then the Kosovo campaigns kicked off, and I had not yet ever been to the training exercises or done anything with my unit yet, and we got deployed and was sent to the Kosovo campaigns during those operations when Milosevic was, doing the genocide and ethnic cleansing, and we were part of those units that were down there in the mountains and part of that campaign and that mission. So that was my first actual training and a little bit of combat operations there really wasn't any conflicts before then, really, since Desert Storm and some of these little operations from the mass scale things.
And so what was that like on an individual level, and those that you were serving alongside with? How did that impact you all? And were you prepared at that time? Did the Army do anything to address? You're laughing.
I'd only been in really to my unit for 3.5 months. 4.5 months, really. And so being prepared for that, I don't think anybody, you train, but I don't think anybody, no one had seen any type of combat, even small little bits or what we have now. And so I don't think maybe what to expect. It was pretty primitive. We lived in our vehicles out in fields, pretty rough conditions, in the mountains a lot. And then sometimes we get a glimpse of the Air Force living really good. But it was an amazing opportunity, amazing experience. It was my first combat entrance with loading vehicles in an airplane, and out of nowhere, thing goes black, flares go off, and you drop out of the sky and you hit the ground. And they don't really warn you for that. And so at 19 years old, it was an interesting experience. I remember we hit the ground, we all just staring at each other like, what just happened?
Wow.
And that was like 2:00 in the morning. They dropped the ramp, and we got unloaded, and it was pouring down rain, and just you get to your mission briefs and get rolling again. So I was a private at that time. First time I've been shot at, blown up. Saw tons and tons and tons and tons of bombs drop, things like that. That was a pretty active air campaign. It was beautiful to watch from the mountains. So that part was cool. But I don't think the reality of what was happening to those people. Villages being taken out, literally wiping out parts of civilization. That part really didn't hit till a lot later. There's little things that will trigger you from experiences like that. But as a young guy, I mean, you're just excited to be in an environment that, with other, you know, soldiers and Marines and special operations. And I actually ran across a Marine that was Force Recon at that time. He was there at the same location that I was at, and he came through the program actually. And we were just chatting back and forth. So it was a small world.
So after about 6 years, when you made the decision to leave, what was that like for you? Is it something that you expected, or did you expect to make it a career?
I wanted to stay in and maybe pursue more of the special operations side of things. I started having problems with my knees. I had some surgeries, and a lot of it just ended up kind of like hindering the future of that, and so quality of my physical body. I was very active growing up, so we ended up making the decision to get out. And I honestly, it was really abrupt. I'm with my brothers over there. I was in charge of one section of a track. Basically, we were attached to the 3rd ACR over in Iraq, and I had one vehicle, my buddy had the other. We had like small squad side elements, but we're very, 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 very busy during that time of the year. And so, next thing you know, you're with them. You share this experience for a year with them almost, and next thing you know, you're plucked from them and starting a business. My transition was very abrupt. I mean, you're in engagements, and then next thing you know, you're filling out paperwork to become a civilian, and you're pretty alone. And so, but it's like anything. You set a mission, set a focus, and you prioritize and execute it. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't understand business. I mean, grew up around it, but until you start one and do it, you don't really know what you're doing. You can study all the books you want. And then I remember I was getting ready to do terminal leave. I was going into post, and I called my father and was talking to legal, getting everything ready for the LLC, and started PB Equestrian.
So you had, even though the transition of the decision to leave was abrupt, it sounded like you had a plan.
It was, it was a rough one, but it was a plan. I decided I wanted to go into that world and teaching. I like teaching. I like the challenges. Anything challenging and hard, task oriented is really my cup of tea. The horses were great. I didn't know what they were going to do for me from a PTS side of things, or from just a service of transition and what you do and what the benefits can be until a lot later. But I wrote a letter to a gentleman that was a world-renowned horseman and had a good program after an engagement in Fallujah, and sent it home, and eventually got to my mom, and she sent it to him, and he said, "Keep your head down. I'll have a spot for you when you get home." And so that's kind of how it started.
So let's go back just a little bit. So while you were still in the military, you had an idea of working with horses. And so is that something that you had done when you were a child, or what was the significance, or how did that come about?
I always liked them. I was around them. If I was smart, I would have got into them a lot earlier. That's where all the girls are. So it would have been a lot easier. Would have been great. But I wasn't. I'm a typical guy. Sports, motorcycles, do things the hard way, and I didn't pay attention. So, moving forward with that, I actually would take the guys, and we'd work on ranches. I used to volunteer some stuff out there in Colorado Springs. There's a lot of military in that community. So just to get away from it, I'd go. It just cleared my head. I really enjoyed it a lot. And then I got to work with some horses that are a little challenging. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but it was really it was soothing. At the same time, it had this really, really awesome challenge. I had to connect with this animal that doesn't understand a word I'm saying, but I had to figure out a way to communicate with them, show affection, things of that nature. And it was a great opportunity. So when I'm over an operation, we don't dream about being in cubicles and typical business life. You're thinking of open spaces sometimes, or something of peace. I thought of the challenges, and I looked up this gentleman named John Lyons, and just said his program made sense, and it could be applied to any discipline, I figured. So, and then I really jumped in the deep end, and you sink or swim, and I don't plan on sinking.
So the gentleman you reached out to, this John Lyons, what was his program that you wanted to be a part of?
He was a clinician, and he was kind of like, he was in the beginning stages of doing the expos and clinician and teaching and certification programs. He was in the early stages of the industry. I did really well. It made sense to me, and so with that, I I just reached out to him. He actually had a brother that was in recon in Vietnam, and he was killed in action.
Hmm.
So that was unfortunate.
So when you say just starting out in the industry, are you talking about, I'm going to say a term and I don't know if it's appropriate, but equine therapy, utilizing horses for what we're talking about with war horses, or was it something different?
The word therapy is not. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's as taboo as it was before. But with the program, I had seen equine therapy programs around the country, teaching with them. I've worked with horses that were at equine therapies when I would travel and do clinics and all that fun stuff. But what I did notice with it is that the ones that were trying to work with veterans, what you do with children is going to be very different than what you do with a veteran.
Sure.
And with my background and what I was looking for, would I go to it? So the program design, would I go to this program? How do I get my knuckle dragging, door kicking, bar fighting, stubborn, Marines, people like that involved, because we do come from a different background, and so. But is there a lot of therapy in there? Do you get your own therapy? There's a lot of those benefits there? Absolutely. But you don't see therapy used in a lot of my verbiage because if for the longest time, I would never have ever gotten and those participants or those people involved.
Gotcha. Okay, so that program that you're referring to that you were very interested in shortly after coming out of the military is kind of, it sounds like what laid the groundwork for everything that you're doing
Oh
now.
yeah, it was a business program. There was nothing therapy about it. I mean, you go in if you think that's. I mean, well, it was therapeutic for me, but it was very very intense. It was hard. I mean, you're starting green horses to finish horses and then evolving from it. So, um, if you need a lot of coddling, that was not the program. So I've never been to any formal, like, you have to go get this credential for therapy programs, because at the end of the day, I've worked with plenty of people that they're phenomenal individuals, big hearts. They got all the degrees. They took a 4-week course on horses. Now they're equine therapists. Well, I mean, not really, because it's like anything, it takes years to perfect, and horsemanship and learning the horses. Abraham Lincoln said it kind of best. I think he said, was it, I can replace a general in 2 minutes, but it's much more difficult to replace a good horse because of the time and
Mhm.
commitment and what it takes to learn that skill set. And I think honestly, exposing yourself, making yourself vulnerable to what the horses can bring out, challenging you emotionally, mentally, and physically. Many times you get thrown from a horse, you hit the ground, you have two options: you walk away and quit, or you get back on the horse. If you do walk away, that barrier you're creating will get bigger and bigger and much more difficult to climb over. So, as scary as it may be, or your anxiety's through the roof, um, you have to push through that. And the beauty of it is once you do that with that animal, there's a connection and bond that's amazing. But it was a training and business platform for inspiring um, trainers and clinicians, stuff like that. And what you would do for the average amateur rider, what it did for me was it opened me up to be incredibly competitive. I am a competitive person, so I took those skill sets and I created my own company.
Wow, wonderful. You you refer to the fact that you said the term PTS referring to yourself. Can you talk about how, when, I mean, were you diagnosed? How do you know you have it, and how does all this kind of fit into the big picture?
I didn't know I had it till a lot later, and then diagnosed. I waited like typical military stubborn guys. No, I'm good. No, I'm good. I don't need to. Someone else needs it more, or that's for other people. This is our job. Um, a buddy of mine, got me convinced to go in and do it, and obviously I had it, obviously, and then I have some TBI from explosions and stuff like that from IEDs. But
At what point was this that you went in and decided to see a
actually,
doctor?
like 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Just recently. But
Okay.
I understood like PTS, what it was, prior to that. I just honestly, it's just like any entrepreneur. I mean, you just submerge yourself, and then taking time for yourself, setting time aside, working on you, and working on and taking that time initiative outside your family. Most of us don't do that, especially entrepreneurs or driven businessmen and women. So it took a little bit of time, but my PTS, when I noticed it back then, we didn't really talk about it much, and there wasn't a lot of data and a lot of information going out because everyone's still kind of new to it. Because remember, I got out in '04, so Documentation. We didn't document in '03, and we
Mm-hmm.
didn't document anything. There was no computers like you get hit, great, don't go to sleep. You got a concussion, get ready for the next mission. That's the mentality back then. Now it's way better. Doesn't mean the documentation is a much more proficient, much more available. But when I think it was about 8 years later, almost when I got out, I kind of started having some feelings. Things weren't really clicking, and I stuff starts uprooting. So anybody's familiar with trauma, or if you suppress it or push it down, eventually at some point, it's unresolved trauma. You don't address it, it's going to come up. And the beauty of it is it comes at you like a freight train at the weirdest times. So there's no like easing into it, and the United States government doesn't really work on transition units and preparing you for that type of stuff and those emotions. So, one day, I mean, I first time I really discussed anything about combat or war in my service was actually in a clinic in North Carolina. I got done teaching a horse clinic, 3 to 4 day clinic, and I took these problem horses, and they're all explosive and doing all this crazy stuff, and I would fix them ish, get them going. You can ride them. This gentleman came up to me and said, "Hey, you do a great job fixing those horses, but you don't realize they're fixing you." And I looked at him kind of like, "That was a weird comment."
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "You're a vet," and I said, "So are you." And we started talking. He was an A-team guy from Special Forces in Vietnam, and we just discussed. And he says, "Horses saved my life." And I started kind of listening to him a little bit, and we were discussing, sharing stories. And I'm like, "Okay, I'm putting two and two together." And then I met other wonderful guys. Woody Williams was a World War II Medal of Honor recipient, Marine Corps. He owned a 30-horse Morgan barn and worked with children for years. And his horses, he says, were everything to him. They were his sanity, kept him grounded. They were just important. And I started looking into the history of our founding fathers, generals, commanders out there. They were avid horsemen. And then you look into the business world that are there's some amazing individuals that, what do they do to decompress? What do they do to connect? What do they do? What grounds them? A lot of them, there's quite a few of them that ride horses and work horses. And so there was a common ground there. And I think after that, I started realizing, obviously what I was doing for a living was having a significant impact on my transition, but I still hadn't really discussed and faced it. And so buddies of mine, a good friend of mine, Corey Willie, he now works here. He's in Kansas City now. He was in service with me over there in Iraq, and he had a little bit rough transition, and he was explaining to me too, is like, hey, we have a lot of guys getting out that are just not doing good. You have suicide, you have a lot of these issues. But when you come to learn too, is as men mostly, but I think women are a little more open to feelings that sometimes it can be, they'll approach it a little quicker, and there's not as much as the tough persona you have to work through. Which is kind of great when you work with women, as long as they feel comfortable and safe, and you create a really good positive environment and you support that. It's amazing what can happen. But with men, if you can create an environment where they can be comfortably vulnerable and willing to talk and decompress, and there's no judgment, they realize it actually takes more guts and strength to do that alone. And the horses are a great avenue to do that, because you can take, someone like myself, or challenge me first. Don't limit me. If you limit me, I probably won't have anything to do with it. So that part of it was with war horses, was with these individuals. I wanted to make sure if they wanted to do something to even kind of a crazy level, we could say, yeah, we can do it. Let's just figure out the process and get you there. And overcoming those obstacles and those fears. And within that, there's a lot of healing, a lot of fear, but you regain that confidence. So similar things that what happens with people. I kind of made some adjustments in my life, talked to some buddies, and then I actually forgave myself on a 3-mile run training for a triathlon. And that was the beginning of War Horses. That's really kind of when I say what it began, is when that day when like when you understand you can't control whatever happened. And what it was, there's no good or bad. It's just, that's what happened. And at the end of the day, you forgive yourself, no more guilt. No shaming yourself, things like that. You let go of all that. You can really move forward and think forward in your life. And I think that was a pretty substantial point in my stepping stones to developing war horses.
Wow, that's amazing, Patrick. Thanks for sharing all that, because I think you're absolutely right. When we talk about stigma, I think that's really the biggest barrier for why people don't want to reach out for help. And so I think you've explained how your program and working with horses does a really good job of helping to break down those barriers. And so if you don't mind kind of transitioning now, you already kind of started talking about it, but how did War Horses for Veterans come into existence? I know that you talk about on your website who you have some co-founders. So talk a little bit about that for the listeners, if you don't mind.
Well, I was developing the program over a period of time, and prior to meeting, Andy and Patricia Brown, I was piecing together like an opportunity to, I've had amazing owners, amazing clients that were pretty. I was sitting at a show in Kentucky, and I was like, man, this is amazing. I have these amazing individuals in front of me, very accomplished, well-to-do, good-hearted, hardworking. I said, that I wish, veterans had the same opportunity I had right now. This would be awesome. This would just be awesome. Because outside of the horses, though, is providing those avenues of mentorship, guidance, direction is really, really important. You're going to have many mentors in your life. It's not going to just be one or two. And so this was important to me that, I started kind of piecing things together. So a few years later, Andy Brown had a stallion that they were having problems with, and a woman at the time that was managing his operation, I had worked with one of her show jumpers and, had, what, fix it or whatever you want to consider it. And she says, hey, I think we have a problem with the stallion. I want you to work on it. I'm like, oh, I'm good. I had plenty of business, plenty of work. I was happy with where I was and where we were going with our company. And they're like, no, I think you need to come down and check this horse. So that, money's not an issue. I was like, well, it's not about that. I just I don't need to. I'm good. I think you and the owner would get along real well. I'm like, okay, whatever. And the funny thing is 3 weeks before meeting Andy, I had a talk with my father, and I said, Dad, I need a mentor. I'm craving a mentor. And then it was 3 weeks later, my dad's like, oh, I understand. He had a really good one that was for, he's a physician. He had an amazing founding father of some of the hospitals here in Kansas City that mentored my father. And my dad's like, no, I understand. And a few weeks later, I met Andy Brown. And Andy Brown is a big-hearted, loving. I mean, he'd do anything for you. He has a huge heart. He has no filter. And so he's a pretty comical guy, but he puts everything on the table. He'll do anything for you. And we met, and it was I won't use the words that we had discussion, but it was interesting. And we had a dialogue back and forth. And I was working one of his horses, and he kind of just said, who the hell are you? And I said, who the hell are you? And he says, I own this damn place. And I was like, oh, I think this is going to be great. And we hit it off. He played rugby. I played rugby. We had a lot in common. Our personalities actually are very similar. And, they were in a very different field in horses. And something was a calling, there's a purpose behind it. And we built a relationship, and then we shifted, and basically he hired me off the market, in a way. And then soon after I got into fixing and working on, our program and redeveloping the business there, we sat on the front porch, and he says, I want to help veterans. I said, well, what the hell do you mean by that? And he goes, no, I want to help, because he's employed vets. He's done a lot for veterans. He's always had a passion to help veterans. And I was like, well, I have an idea. I know it will work. And told him, and 30 minutes later, he says, get it started. And he says, well, I said, give me 2 years proof of concept. Third one, I'll let everyone and their mom know. And then the third year, that's when we, we're on Megyn Kelly, Today's Show, and stuff like that. And we launched it that way. And it's very fortunate, very blessed to have the people in our lives and people in my life that helped us. Him and his wife Patricia have been influential in supporting and to evolve. Because any business, I don't care if it's nonprofit or not, I mean, you have to have the founding backing and support and people. And it's not just from a financial standpoint, emotionally, and mentors and education. Because I think one of the things with nonprofit is I've noticed is they look, and it's important, that role that nonprofits have. They fill a gap in society. At the end of the day, it's still a company. It's a business. If you don't run it right, it's not going to last. It won't stay around. And so having them around and having their support and anything with horses, I'll tell you right now, and if we're going to do it right, Andy has a mentality as if we're going to do it right, we do it right. I have the same mentality. If we're going to go in, we go all in. We don't just do it, half lit. So we knew this would be a very expensive endeavor. Anytime you put horses involved with anything, it's expensive. But it was important that we made sure that we have horses of quality at different levels so individuals can work from a basic level to advance. The thing I wanted to make sure for the veterans out there and now first responders that they're not limited in what they can and can't do, because with PTS, with anxiety, depression, especially anxiety, can be very debilitating. You could be the strongest person in the world. You could be seen as this powerhouse. And then the moment that anxiety comes in and grabs a hold of you and you don't understand how to work with it, you don't know how to tame it, control it, it can drop you right down to the knees and paralyze you, emotionally. So I think that's important. And then as long as you create this positive, supportive environment to help people work and regain those confidence, regain those abilities, every single one of them have, amazing attributes and things that can be brought back to the surface. It's not that it's lost, and it's not there. It just needs to be, basically brought. I always say, like, come back on true north and help those individuals get there. And I've always said we're not like a kumbaya, touchy feely. We're not going to hold hands. We're not going to skip in a field full of flowers around horses. That's just not our deal. I do love yoga. I think yoga's great. But at the end of the day, I think it was I'm catered to a certain clientele base, and it's been very beneficial. It's worked really well for us.
Well, and I just want to clarify that we don't skip, hold hands, and run in a field when we do yoga, by the way.
Where you have goats climbing all over you yet?
Yeah, I've never been to goat yoga.
I know, but good for them.
Yes. So all of that is, wow, that's amazing. So 3 weeks before you meet your co-founder, you tell your dad, hey, I need a mentor. And like, lo and behold, 3 weeks later, all of this starts to unfold. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I still hadn't gone all over the country downsizing the operation. We had 38 horses on the property. We still had a for-profit that we're working and we're running, and I started the nonprofit by driving all over the country at the same time. I was doing auctions, I was doing all this stuff and juggling and starting the nonprofit. Like any other business, and when you start, it's just you and maybe one other person, and you're the janitor and you're the CEO.
You said it took a couple of years before things got started, officially started. I mean, not the behind the scenes work you're talking about. What year was that, and when did War Horses officially become into existence?
501c3 was established in 2014, right around September, October. First veteran that came through was 2015, and then soon after that, we reunited 2 Vietnam veterans. And I want to make sure I bring this to light too, is that the Vietnam era veteran was important to have involved with our organization, because those individuals are who we looked up to, who we read about. It's who you inspired to do. I mean, like these guys, I was like, read these stories, holy smokes, you guys are amazing. But think about how they were treated when they came home, things like that. And they still haven't, you got to realize, like, they just went to work and they had never really dealt with any of that. So we reunited 2 individuals, Gary Llewellyn and Lloyd Pittman. Lloyd Pittman was Gary's door gunner. Gary Llewellyn was a scout pilot in Vietnam, 1st of the 9th Cav. Lloyd was 75th Rangers. I was part of the LRPS teams back then. Amazing individuals. And then Gary became a very influential part of our program. I met him, right in late 2015, early 2016. And we reunited them. It had been like 48 years since they had seen each other.
Wow. How did that come to be? How did you decide to get those 2 together?
Through friends, through my family. And then Gary came down and met me, and we kind of hit it off. We just had a lot in common. And then I asked him, I said, do you have someone that you would like to connect with, or someone from Vietnam? I said, we'll take care of it, because we pay for everything. We pay for fly everyone in. It doesn't cost them a dime. And we make sure they're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for them. And we brought them together. It was it's amazing. It's still the story of having them together and seeing them together, because they had an incident in the air that then they had to hurry up and get back to the AO, and then that was the last time they saw each other, and Gary had to go to the hospital. So and then his service was over, and so they never had closure from that. So there's a lot of closure that you get if you can reunite. That's why there's programs where you do your reunions. It's really important, because there's a closed chapter, and then the bond you make over in combat is like nothing else. And so when we brought them together, it was amazing. And then from that, it led us to bring other Vietnam veterans together, and we brought a group of 75th Rangers LRPS teams together, and that was extraordinary. It was like having the History Channel uncut, unfiltered, and it was a true honor to bring them together and do amazing and spend time with those guys. Because at the same time, they can help us, prevent us going down the same rabbit holes that themselves or their buddies went through, or the things they've seen over the years. So that's been a very fortunate event. COVID last year obviously put a strain on bringing, because we finished the building. We wanted to do a big reunion and bring a lot of the Vietnam veterans back and bring some new ones and let them share the new space. At the same time, get them together, get them to heal together. And it's made a big difference. And so that's always been something. Part of the mission is always to get back to the Vietnam era and support the individuals that fought the wars ahead of us.
That is so cool, because it makes me think of so many things. But when it comes to first responders, since that's my background, I think a lot of times we tend to forget, even though we're having these conversations a little bit more regularly now about healing and PTS and TBIs. There's all these people from before that didn't get the benefit of these types of programs, or even having this type of conversation. I've had a few people approach me that are both 40-year law enforcement veterans after taking a class of mine where we talk about some of this stuff, and they said they've never heard about any of this before, and they wish they would have had information and access to programming and resources. So I think it's outstanding that you are giving back to those that served before us.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, without them, we wouldn't have had what we have. So it's
so cool.
You don't forget that. We always hear it too. You hear, I wish we would have had this when we were, back in the day. But at the same time, like, well, I mean, you have it now. Just because you're older doesn't mean it's not effective. And like you said, for first responders, I mean, that you've got a group of individuals that are really behind with things. There's a lot of focus with veterans, and now there's so much has happened, and there's a lot of positive progression. I think with what I've seen, me not being a first responder, but supporting and us providing this location and this awesome opportunity with it. I think they're making leaps and bounds pretty quick. It's going to take some old timers, some old thinking, some styles, culture, a lot of culture change.
Definitely.
I think there's not one military veteran, the special operation guys we work with and everything else, that doesn't have extreme respect for the first responders. Every single time we bring it up, we're like, oh my gosh, like all day long, send me in a combat. I can go do combat operations, but what the first responders and what they have to do on a daily basis, because it's in their backyard, it's their own people, it's things of that nature. That's a whole different ball of wax. And so I have an immense amount of respect, and obviously learning, empathy, emotional intelligence too is important to, empathize with what's going on. And then at the end of the day, you take care of your own. That's why it's important to have, people that understand, or participants that understand what they've been through. So for combat veterans, it's kind of an unspoken deal. Same thing for first responders. Bringing in Jason Klepak, he was in the Army. He's a veteran himself, and obviously he's a police officer, and left the force and to come over and really leap and take this on, and help me launch the first responder program, and done a phenomenal job. Last year, really initiated. I think 2 years ago from this March, he's been with us, and then prior to that, he about a year of volunteering and being a part. He just drove onto the property, and that actually the guy who works for us that manages the farm gave him a heart attack because he thought he was in trouble. But there's no reason. He does great things. But called Jason, and he came back, and we just kind of talked, hit it off, and then it just evolved from there. And then he really educated me a lot on the needs and what's going on, and I was pretty blown away on the lack of for first responders. That's what blew my mind.
So just to kind of back up a little bit, you obviously start out, this program is for veterans, and then you stumble upon this guy who's at the time on duty, working in uniform in his patrol car, coming onto your property, correct?
Yes. And
Okay.
with all the vets that we've had, a lot of our fire or police that we've flown in, it was just like a building block. And then Jason drove on the property, and I was like, well, this must need to happen.
Right. And when was that? Just to give me some idea of how long ago this started.
That'd be
with the first responders.
2017, 2018. 2018, he came in. So, and then 2019 and 2020, coming into that, we're starting the building, we're starting to get things rolling, building the platform for the first responders. And honestly, it's a very close mirror to what we do with veterans. But the first responder schedules are kind of crazy. So we had to accommodate and work with that a little bit. So we've got a very, variety of different things, but we initiated, Jason really kicked off the first responder 1 days last year. We wanted to have something to contribute to help out. And then obviously with the incidents of last year and what happened with between COVID, the protests and stuff like that, the amount of stress that was put on them, we kicked open the doors and we're like, let's figure this out. And we just started running 1 day workshops all the time.
So
And
you started out with a longer program with the veterans. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
they would fly in, 3 to 4 days. Now, it started like I set it up as a 3 day clinic because I taught 3 day clinics all the time. So you understand though, like you're working and you're learning and you're spending 12 hours a day, and then you still have food. You have other times you have to work. So it's a pretty long day. So you
Mhm.
got 2 to 3, sometimes 4 days, extensive, and there's a lot of reflection, obviously, that comes with that, and you learn a lot about yourself. So moving the first responder side of things, we had to accommodate schedules. There was challenges from that standpoint. Not a lot of them can leave. I mean, they don't take a lot of time off, and they usually do too much overtime. So it's a common theme I've noticed.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I think over the years, just doing the 1 days, and then eventually the departments were just blown away. I mean, because over 14, 15 agencies now, they'll send the people out on like on duty, and they get to come out for the whole day. Just getting that introduction and breaking that up. And then within that, we've, the help of Jennifer Haska and some of the other professionals out there to where we've been able to integrate some other types of programs that accommodate certain needs that have been incredibly effective. And so it allows the biggest thing I've noticed over the years is you've got to understand those you need to make it flexible. You make it too rigid of a program, technically, depending on the dynamic of it, but then it's not really their weekend, or is it their time? It's your agenda. There needs to be a discuss what's the outcome, what are we looking for success, and structure of that, obviously. But you need to be able to, you need to allow them to breathe. So just like the military, and it's just a lot of time law enforcement, there's a lot of structure to it. Well, sometimes that's a problem. We got to like go with that. It's okay not to have everything perfectly laid out. um, let things flow, let things come into play. Uh, there is a curriculum, there is structure behind it, but you better have A, B, C, D, E, and F lined up, pull in right away when A and B didn't work. And I've talked to many veterans that have gone to different programs that are really, really good. It just, they were trying to squeeze so much in such a period of time. So then my question is, well, is it really for you, or is it for the individual putting it on? And that would be the question to ask. So you want to provide this, you want to share this. At the end of the day, it's their weekend, it's their day, it's their 5 days, it's their 7 days, it's their time. So
So you kind of let them guide how things go in a way?
in a way, we structure. I mean, we guide it, we roll it. There's a purpose, place, and time for everything. But you have to be willing to read body language. You're going to have a lot of information before they come in. Is there physical limitations? If there isn't, personality traits, different things like that. So you'll have an understanding of how they receive and give information, if that makes sense. So, over a 3 or 4 day, intensive program, at the end of the day, with Group A, our outcome is, did they decompress? Did they, well, if you say reflect, did they get the clear head? Now, from that, are we moving forward with a different mission and different direction in a more positive manner? And then you have your follow ups and everything like that. With another group, it may be, their hypervigilance is just through the roof. And so within hours with working horses, you always see like within hours, it drops drastically. Anxiety drops drastically. Until, I don't care what program you go to, until you get them to drop that shell and to drop all that, it's going to be very hard for them to be receptive to trainings, classroom work, all that stuff, because they're just going to blank out. They'll see right through it, and they're not going to receive. So they're not even receptive to that information. And so, like, even if you want to introduce yoga, you want to introduce meditation, um, a lot of the participants, I would be like, hey, if I go up to them, I'm real direct with some of them. I'm like, you can't even move. Your hips don't even move. I said, how do you expect to even do this, this, and this? And they're like, well, I can do it. And then they get out, and I'm like, well, why don't you try some yoga? Well, I'm not doing yoga. I'm like, well, it actually works. And I said, if your joints feel good, your mobility feels good, and you're able to do it. I said, your brain feels good. I said, you'll be surprised what your body will do. My wife got me into yoga. Actually, in the early stage of our relationship, we had just met in '04. I had only been home for a little bit, and my knees sounded like Rice Krispies. My joints hurt, my body hurt. And she's like, why don't you just go to yoga with me? And I'm like, I'm not going to yoga. You're out of your mind. She goes, there's really pretty women. And I go, I'm going to yoga. And we went, and it was really hard. It was really challenging for me, and I got a lot out of it. And so teaching breathing, meditation techniques, stuff like that, to be a great horseman, man or woman on that side, you're going to have to learn to breathe. If you can't breathe, you can't control your emotions. And then that controls your environment and your energy. So that's been a really fascinating journey, even just the past couple of years, learning more about that type of techniques and things like that. Like we talked with Kim, was, everyone's going to be for different programs, different needs, different deals. But at the end of the day, we're trying to get them to just, can you be present? Can you have peace in your mind? Can you be okay with the past and move forward with the future? And then honestly, just, enjoy life, challenge yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So if someone listening is interested in coming to War Horses, and whether they're a veteran or a first responder, I know there's some different offerings. Do you have to fill out an application, or how would somebody go about doing that? Because you also mentioned some paperwork and having some information about people ahead of time before they come through.
Yes, there's an application process. We're actually in the process right now of actually putting together a new website. We're updating everything. So, like the first responder program, you would go to Jason at whfb.org, and you would reach out to Jason. And with Brett Court right now, he's on board now. We brought on for director of development and support with the first responder because of the demand. Those two work together a lot with that program, which has been great. Those two would handle the first responders a lot. With the veteran side, we have an additional team, and those individuals, Brett and Jason, are a part, and they help out when available for that, in case depending on influx. So at whfb.org, you go to the website, you can hit apply, or you can. A lot of times, we're going to have a new process to where you actually inquire about it, and then I'll hop on the phone with you. We'll kind of do like an interview, and make sure what you're looking for. And if we're not a fit, it's not a big deal. We'll find another program. We'll find other things you can do. It's not the end of the world. Right now, we're in the process of doing something called, it's a brand new program. It's called War Horses for Soft, for special operations community. It's pretty big. So it's a
It's
really
very
good
cool.
opportunity. It's a big honor for us. And we actually have our first group coming in April. Last year with DOD stuff got shut down. So a lot of these guys are men and women are active. And so we're trying to, if we can we get involved with them before they get out? Can we help with that transition so we can plant that seed and then snag up some of the ones that did get out afterwards? So then that's one of the agendas for that. We've got a great team there. We've got a tactical psychologist that comes in on each time for those groups. It's pretty in depth. So that will be up. So if you're part of the special forces community, SOCOM, the whole JTAC, everything, you can apply through that process as well. And then for the veteran community, you reach out at info@whfb.org, and we'll get back with you. We'll be posting some specific special workshops through the year. Unfortunately, with the demand of the program, we're limited on what we can and can't do, obviously, and then we're ramping up from COVID and all that. So, but you will see some amazing leaps and some amazing growth within War Horses over the next couple of years.
And you guys have an amazing facility. I got the opportunity to visit. And the thing that kind of struck me about it is that, besides the fact that it's beautiful and it's a really great facility, there's some other things that you guys are doing that's pretty cool. Some follow-up programs. And one of the things I want to make sure people know about you specifically is your mad culinary skills and how you incorporate that into this whole philosophy of what you guys are doing there.
Food is important. Food drives an army. If you wanna take over and conquer, you got to feed, and you want to get in the belly. I would say, but breaking bread, common ground. It's I call it the Switzerland of operations. So and you can take so many different diversities and disagree on every platform, but you can come over and agree over food or a plate or a meal. And so it's been like a therapy for me. It's an outlet for me. You have a beginning and end, and you learn to create something wonderful that people can enjoy together. The idea of the culinary program is after each day you cook with a chef, or you have a chef prepare. So it's an option. Not everyone wants to cook, but they love to eat. But there's a lot of individuals that, they'll come up and be like, hey, I really enjoy cooking. And I'm like, hey, we'll whisper about it, but that's cool. It's okay. But it's what we've noticed too is individuals that learn to start, it's like we teach a trade. War horses, kind of go back to it is you come in, I'm going to teach you horsemanship. In the backside of it, yeah, there's a lot of therapy, there's a lot of things you're going to get. But in the end of the day, at the root of it, if you really take this, you can provide meal, you can feed your family, you can put a roof over your head with this. Culinary skills, you're creating a trade. You can, cook for your family. We notice that in society, we're not cooking with our families as much. We're not eating at tables together as much. So it's really important to try to encourage that. But after a day of working together, whatever you learn, whatever you embrace that day, and you sit down with this amazing meal. And I'm not talking like you're just eating an average meal. You're eating some ridiculous food. You hit all your senses, but from a psychological standpoint, it's going to help you ingrain that experience. You'll remember what you experienced that day. And like you came that day with Ken, it was awesome. I love hosting people and having meetings with them, and we're cooking together. So you sat there while I cooked, and we talked, discussed, chat with everyone. That's unique. Not every day you get to go to a professional kitchen. It's like it's a really nice kitchen.
Yes, it
incredible
is.
supporters and chefs that helped make this happen, and Greg Oliver that helped design it. We just love doing it. And then eating a good meal, and then within the programs, you'll see in the future, you'll see a lot more nutrition get involved, and you're going to learn how to cook for yourself, because I think that's one of the problems. We could do a lot of these wonderful things for the mental health side of things. Well, let's get real. At the end of the day, if you don't change certain habits, if you aren't willing to be the change, and diet is, unfortunately, diet is really important, and you're going to change with age. So knowing what your gut health and all the understanding your body is going to be really important. Your mental state does improve. It's scientifically proven. It's just a matter of, when it comes down to it, is discipline and willing to make that change. It's hard. Change is scary, but at the end of the day, it's necessary.
Yeah, there's a whole field of science. It's nutritional psychiatry, which talks exactly about what you were just referring to. And, eating fast food versus eating salmon, Brussels sprouts, and salad prepared by Patrick, two vastly, completely different experiences, and how much better for your body. So yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think that's awesome that you guys are doing that. And then when I visited, I had heard about some other things that you guys are working on: follow-up programs, transition programs, wellness programming. Can you speak a little bit about what you guys are offering there?
Right. Transition's always been a very important part of it. There's a lot of good companies out now that have really stepped up and helped with military transition. But what I found out last year is the first responders don't have transition programs,
Nope.
which is pretty baffling. So I think anybody that's has those connections, from resume for connections to helping narrow that gap, and just like many of the military guys, men and women, and the first responders, your vision's about that big, of what's out there. So it's important that within these, like with our organization that will be involved in this transition program, is what are the needs, and sitting down with people who run CEOs, presidents of companies, recruiters, people who write resumes, just the network, and understanding how to utilize the network, and learning a little bit more about yourself. So we have these assessments. We have different ways to kind of figure out what are going to be some of the things that will energize you. Not so much important about how much money you need to make right away. What's going to energize you? Because you can make a lot of money but be miserable. And at the end of the day, going from the job that you're in, and how does that translate over to another? It's a corporate company, or starting your own business. Entrepreneurship is always something that's it's very cool. It's stressful, but it's cool. But at the end of the day, with transition there, health and nutrition will be evolving that. We've got buddies, we've got things that we're going to be doing more and more, and stepping that up with nutritional chefs, classes, workshops. I like fitness, I like challenges, so you'll be seeing more of that. A lot of it's funny to watch the guys. They'll give me crap. Like, I do ice baths. I love breath work. I like Wim Hof. I like stuff like that. So I think it's important that we're always challenging ourselves and exposing ourselves to something new.
Yeah,
Just
I also recently started to do that. I don't do ice baths, but I have experimented with cold showers. And at first I thought it was crazy. I didn't know what the intention behind it is. But then when you learn that you're stressing your nervous system in a positive way, and you kind of understand the why behind it, which I think is so important for our culture, it makes so much sense. And then
it works.
It does. It works. Absolutely. Especially if you have inflammation or chronic pain. I know that it's helped me a lot with low back pain.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I couldn't
Yes.
agree more. I'm a cold shower / ice bath wannabe. That's on the radar for me.
It's, it does inflammation of the body. And then on top of the inflammation of, what you put in your body, food and stuff like that, but definitely the showers, it stimulates, you feel better. And I love one of the best things I ever heard was like, if you're really depressed, jump in a tank of ice or get in a cold shower. You aren't usually depressed after that. And there's a simple sign, a simple breakdown of that. And like I said, your neuron system and the way your body is triggered and what it does to your brain, it just fires it up. And then when you leave, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel good. I'm cold, but it's awesome. Like I feel really good. And it's just I agree. There's a reason why top performers, people, if you read books, they can say, I hate the cold shower, but I love it because when I'm done, I feel amazing.
Yeah. So just to be clear, if somebody comes to War Horses, you are not going to make them go into an ice bath, correct?
No, 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 no. We are going to be hosting some different workshops of the year. My brother, Will Hood, that is a big part of our program that teaches e-colors and some of the other programs. He's a retired 06 from the Navy chaplain. We'll be doing some workshops, probably some Wim Hof stuff, some different types of breathing techniques. But
very cool.
It's awesome. Some people will say you're nuts, and then the next thing you know, they try it and they're like, okay, I see why you do it. I'm like, I told you.
Well, what's really neat is that, you're offering so many different things, and different things are going to kind of reach or speak out to different people.
Absolutely. The horses are, I feel the horses are one of the most underutilized tools, and they're starting to get notoriety of it. But there's so much you can get from it. So if you just do the ground stuff, that's fine. But when you get on their back, you're vulnerable. You take it to the next level, you're even more vulnerable. The more vulnerable you can be, the better off you're going to be, because that's the more you have to let go and be comfortable with. And in one moment you can do that, it's like an elephant stepping off the moment you're able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell the guys, like, be the change. And at the same time, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So, I always think in my head, I was like, if it scares me and it's hard, and it's not going to cause too much bodily harm, it's not going to affect my family, I said I probably should do it. And so that's kind of just the way I look at things.
Yeah, and that's a really great philosophy because you can't grow unless you're a little uncomfortable. That's
right.
Kind of one of my mottos too. So as we wrap up here, I just want to make sure I bring up something you talked about earlier, which is mentorship. So you already talked about the mentorship and that piece, what you're doing for transition for first responders and military who are leaving their career or who have already left it. But you also you yourself seem to mentor people, other nonprofits, because I know recently there's a nonprofit that's just starting out, Swell, which is all about surfing, kind of the same or similar concept with that self-efficacy, teaching a new skill. And so if you don't mind just talking a little bit about how that works, and you guys help to host a fundraiser and why it's important to you to do things like that.
I think if you don't share knowledge or share experiences, it's a very selfish act. Because the ultimate goal is to empower others and see them, and it's like, what's the definition of success? And I would say seeing others succeed through what you've created. It's an awesome experience. So meeting Rob Anderson with, was about over a year and a half ago, sitting down with him, bounce stuff off. I immediately got his vision, understood it. I like the ocean. I love how the ocean humbles you. Horses humble you fast, like really fast. At the same time, the ocean does too. You are smaller than a speck of sand when you're in the ocean. And so I think that's really healthy for people. At the same time, there's such a beautiful connection because there's connection to nature. There's a healthy challenge to it. There's all these things that are very fulfilling. And you don't think about other things. You're focused on the environment and you're in at that time. So your hypervigilance does come down, but you still have to overcome your anxieties and self-doubt, things like that. But when you do, and you have a support group around you to do that with, it's like I always say, you don't clear an obstacle by yourself. If you're going to go in and breach a building, you're going to do it as a team. You don't go by yourself. And even then it's still scary, but you feel really good because you got your team behind. It's the same concept. So being able to get back and sit down and talk with Rob and see that come forward, and then making our facility available, because at the end of the day, we always say is like, this isn't mine, this is ours. The building is to be shared. It was built to share. So for Rob and everyone, for us to come together and sponsor people to go on these trips with Swell, it's always been important to work with other nonprofits and work with other teams. And, Rob's got a great mission. I believe in it. I went on, I went on the first trip with him, what we did in California. And I was a blast. I didn't have, I got to run like an Energizer bunny. I got up super early, I got to surf all day. I could destroy my shoulders. It was awesome, and we cooked. But at the end of the day, just share the struggles, and hopefully each time you do that, you can hopefully make it easier for each individual that's creating something like this or running a business, nonprofit, for profit. You can Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Help them try to get to where they need to get a little quicker. It's not the easiest thing, but at the same time, it's a very rewarding, very fulfilling thing to do. So it was a true honor. I love working with Rob. I'm incredibly excited to see with everything that's coming out with Swell. I'm going to be going on some trips, helping them out. We'll sponsor some people. We'll raise funds and help, veterans and first responders. And hopefully we'll integrate the Swell within the soft program too, which I think will happen here in the near future. So I'm super excited to see what happens with that.
Well, Patrick, you and your team, you guys are doing such great things for veterans and first responders. And I'm glad that you got an opportunity to share that, because I just don't think that that we can do enough for our first responders and our military. And I really appreciate everything that you do. One last opportunity. So if somebody listening is interested in either donating to War Horses or interested in visiting your program, can you just kind of one more time let us know how to do that?
Yeah, you can go to warhorsesforveterans.org or whfb.org. There's donate buttons all over that thing. And at the same time, you can reach out to me directly at patrick@whfb.org. And happy to help out. We do run this by donations through, everyone from the country, from $1, $5 and up. That's how we're able to have the flexibility to do what we do. So we're very fortunate, and any support is fantastic. And we take care of our own. We make sure our veterans and first responders are leading the front with working with these participants. So that's where the funds go, is right to the people.
Excellent. Well, Patrick, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it. And
thank you.
Take care.
Take care.